Welcome, everybody. I hope sounds like you can hear me. So let's get this program started. We are glad to see representatives of various communities, and especially the Helena community here with us today. And I have to say, for the appropriate for the holiday, the drive over from Missoula, and I'm sure from other places this morning, was really a delicious experience, actually almost a Hanukkah experience. The light, the sun, the clouds was dancing, and then to be finished with a rainbow, a full rainbow arcing over the city of Helena. I thought that was just lovely. So in the tradition, this I think will be about our 15th year or so, or 16th year of assembling for the recognition and celebration of the Jewish holiday Hanukkah. I want to thank everyone for being here, representatives of the government and the people of the great city of Helena and the state of Montana. So I'm not going to go on and on. Let me go ahead and invite representatives, and there may be a couple people we might have to ask to help light. Our first order of business is to go ahead and light the candles for the holidays. So if I can ask representatives, and I'm going to have to probably shout out for a couple of people to come up and help us. So somebody from Helena, Bozeman. Let me do this. Let me just get a volunteer for Butte. Does anyone feel comfortable lighting candles for Butte? Good, wonderful. What about Eitz Chaim out of Great Falls? Yeah. And let's see.
Join us in Bozeman.
And Billings?
Here.
Okay.
We're in Bozeman, right?
Here's the candles.
Doesn't matter.
There's Eitz Chaim. Butte right here. Helena. Glacier. Doesn't matter. Why don't we get started?
Yeah, that would do that.
Let's go ahead and start singing the prayer. not only do the number of candles we light each day increase through the holiday, through the years, we're increasing the number of Hanukkahs that we have up here. That's right. It's unbelievable. Okay.
What's up next, Bert?
Well, we're going to invite the governor to come and talk to us. So let's sit down and welcome. We want to welcome our governor, his first time attending this special ceremony, special for not only the Jewish community, but I think for the state of Montana. So thank you, Governor Gianforte.
Yeah, thank you, Bert. And thank you for letting me participate in the lighting and in the beautiful song. It's an honor to be here with old and new friends to celebrate the Festival of Lights. Bert, Rabbi Brook, Rabbi Pills, Rabbi Stafman, thank you for having me with you today. It's really an honor. I appreciate the spiritual and civil leadership you provide to our communities across the state. For 15 years, we've lit these menorah here in the Capitol, and I'm proud to continue this tradition. I'm proud and grateful to continue this with you here today. Montana's Jewish community has a rich history dating back to the Montana Territory. We have active and vibrant Jewish communities in many corners of our state, led by some of the rabbis that are here with us today, and my thanks to you for shepherding and leading spiritually our Jewish communities. And we celebrate them and the light that each one of these communities shines in the various communities across the state. I recently issued a proclamation declaring Shine a Light Week in Montana to coincide with Hanukkah. The purpose of Shine a Light Week in Montana is to use the Festival of Lights to champion the message of light and to send a message of support and solidarity with the Jewish faith and people. And let me be clear, Montana stands in light with the Jewish faith and her people. And we stand firmly against the darkness of anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism is a darkness, and it's a darkness lurking through the fringes of our communities and in our country, and we have to be vigilant. It's a darkness that earlier this year resulted in a swastika being spray painted on a large rock in Missoula. It's a darkness that reared its ugly head this week in New York City. It's a darkness that sometimes clouds the halls of Congress. It's a darkness too often on display at the United Nations, which provides a platform for hate and calls for violent destruction of the Jewish homeland. Anti-Semitism is a darkness that runs counter to our nation's founding and our principles. It's an assault on our cherished values of equality and freedom. Our constitutionally guaranteed freedom of religion is our first freedom in the United States, the first enumerated in our First Amendment. Our freedom of religion guarantees religious liberty to all faiths without prejudice or fear. Our freedom of religion is a bedrock of American exceptionalism dating back centuries. And we must not allow or permit the darkness to cloud that freedom. It is our obligation and responsibility as Americans and as Montanans to shine a light on it. So today we light the menorah to celebrate the Festival of Lights, mindful of the light we must shine on the darkness, in the darkness. And as Judah, the Maccabees, and the Maccabees taught us after declaring the Holy Temple, reclaiming the Holy Temple in Jerusalem, a little light can go a long way. Let me close by expressing my gratitude to all Montanans. The Festival of Lights reminds us of the lessons of peace and hope and perseverance. The last 20 months have brought great challenges, but throughout it all, we have seen the resiliency and perseverance of Montanans. Susan and I hope the Jewish community here in Montana and throughout the world a blessed and happy Hanukkah. Thank you for having me.
I need to use this mic? Yeah, we don't need it. Okay, we do this every year. I've never done it with masks, but we'll do it anyhow, and we'll see what we're made of, right? Helen is trying to reinvigorate Jewish life right now. There's a big project going on here in the city. So let's see what Jewish life really sounds like in Helena. So we'll do it in English, but then we'll do it in Yiddish just for fun. And I know you're from Germany, so the Yiddish should be pretty close to home. Happy Hanukkah! Happy Hanukkah! Guys, we didn't... A freilichen Hanukkah! There you go. So what a great honor to be here today. The governor mentioned and Bert mentioned, we've been here for a long time, but the first Hanukkah celebration here at the state capitol was actually a small one that was hosted in Lieutenant Governor Bollinger's office of Hanukkah 2006. My sister and I were here, and Eric Stern invited us in to have a little celebration in the office. And then of course in 2008 we had our first celebration with Governor Schweitzer, and the only two rabbis there were myself and Rabbi Setzer. And look where we've come to as a state with so many rabbis and so many communities, and things are prospering. I, for myself, for Chabad, I can say that it's a wonderful thing. We have 3 Chabad rabbis here, one in Bozeman, one in Missoula, one in Kalispell, and I could say here today for the first time that God willing, in the next few months we'll be opening up 4th branch of Chabad here in Montana. It hasn't been announced anywhere yet, but we will have a 4th branch in Billings, God willing. We will open up a 4th branch for the Chabad movement, and that's one of a few that we're eyeing right now, other parts of the state, to continue growing the traditional Jewish experience for the Jews of Montana. I had the great honor of first meeting the governor. He was just a businessman in Bozeman, and some random rabbi who was 27 years old emailed him and said, "Hey, Mr. Chief CEO, I'd like to have a cup of coffee with you." So there he pulls up in his pickup truck at the Daily Coffee Shop at Rouse and Oak. And I had a wonderful hour and a half talking to him. I did not succeed in getting what I wanted out of that meeting, but we still remain friends till this very day. And last year, during the pandemic, we had the governor-elect at the time and the First Lady came to our home, just one-on-one, to have a Hanukkah celebration with Chavi and I. And we are grateful for your leadership in being a beacon of light for the state of Montana, for the community of Bozeman where you come from, and for your warm words that you just shared before. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention our superintendent, Elsie Arnson, who's here as well. Is that Wendy? Who's hiding behind? Is it really? Behind the mask. I caught it. And representative from Great Falls, right? Cascade County. Cascade, welcome as well. And Representative Stafman from Bozeman. I have to be careful. He's not just a rabbi. Now he's a politician. It's a dangerous mix for a guy that lives in his community. But I want to share one line about Hanukkah, because we get so caught up in the story of the oil and the story of the war of the Judah the Maccabee. But what did Judah the Maccabee fight for? He didn't just fight so that he can have a temple again in Jerusalem. He fought because he understood a very, very simple thing. The forces of darkness that the governor referred to before, whether it's anti-Semitism or other forms of darkness, they don't sleep. They work 24/7, 365 days a year. And if the forces of light, with the greatest intentions, are asleep at the wheel, they're not sleeping. And so guess who's going to win that battle? We don't have the luxury. Judah the Maccabee understood that we don't have the luxury to sit back and say, well, we beat the Greeks, let's go to Cancun. We'll come back next year and we'll deal with our temple, or we'll find oil. We'll go to a press, and in 2 weeks we'll get new oil. He understood that to fight for hope, to fight for a brighter future, takes a lot of energy, a lot of perseverance, but a belief that tomorrow could be and will be brighter. Many of you in the room today had the great honor. Back in the spring, we produced a Montana edition of the Book of Psalms that was mailed to every Jewish home in the state that I was familiar with. It's a lot. I can't say I got to every Jew. I don't think I'll ever get. I'm trying to get to every Jew. But we mailed it because it's a belief that with all the salvation that comes from other places, the ultimate salvation comes from talking and having a relationship with Almighty God. And so today I'm going to take the great moment of Hanukkah to present this to the governor. If you'd come up, I'd like to present you with your own Book of Psalms, and that in your hardest of moments, you should be able to not rely on anyone else's put. I know you're a man of faith, and the Book of Psalms is equal for everyone. It's a Hebrew-English edition, so if the Hebrew doesn't work out so well, you can always go into English. But I present that to you on behalf of all of us, that you should continue praying, continue having a deep relationship with God. We pray for you pray for you, and together, hopefully, our future will be incredibly bright. So thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you. Who's up next, Bert? Who's up next? Rabbi Vogel? Rabbi Sonia? Who's up?
Rabbi Sonia.
Rabbi Sonia. Rabbi Phillips.
So I don't quite have that volume. Do you hear me? Yes. Wonderful, great. Thank you so much for welcoming us here. I am impressed and enchanted, and these are very much the feelings that I have about Montana in general. I'm impressed and enchanted and inspired by this place. Some of you know that I have applied for the job in Bozeman 3.5 years ago. And it took me a while to muster the strength, and now I'm here and I feel home, and it's due to the Montanans. So coming here, I realized that being a female rabbi in Montana sparks all kinds of associations. So let me just tell you some of mine. Hanukkah is a story about war. And it works so well in the 2nd century BCE because that is when Jews actually were famous for winning wars. They were in a triangle between Greece and Egypt and Syria. And it seems counterintuitive today, but you could actually rent Jewish warriors to go to war against one of the other two empires. They mostly were rented by the Egyptians, and when they lost against the Syrians, and then eventually reclaimed their city, they wrote a story of military strength. But the rabbis didn't leave it at that point. They didn't make Hanukkah into a story of military strength. They made it into a story of hope and survival and resilience, and more than anything else, joy. Hanukkah is a story for us today that reminds us that no matter what happened, and no matter if things went totally wrong, destruction, pain, loss, if you don't lose hope and persevere, God is going to be with you. And that is not only achieved in loud wars, it is also achieved through quiet fires. I want to remind you of a story, and I know most of you will know the story. When our foremother Sarah died, the light in her tent went out. It had been burning all throughout her lifetime without ever having to be rekindled, and now the tent lay dark. When Isaac married Rebekah, the light was burning anew. And not only the light was burning anew, but we read in a midrash that the presence of God came back into that tent. Not because of military strength, but because of love. And because Isaac was open to begin anew and to create a family in which he, actually the first of our forefather, would love his wife and at least one of his sons. But we don't need to go too deep into that. So, thinking about that image of not only a temple with rekindled light, but homes with rekindled light, families with rekindled lights, an entire nation or state, the state of Montana, with rekindled lights, I was inspired to think about another Jewish woman, an immigrant like me. She wrote the following lines, and you all know them. Not like the brazen giants of Greek fame, with conquering limbs astride from land to land. Here at our sea-washed, I moved from Brooklyn, sunset gates shall send a mighty woman with a torch, whose flame is the imprisoned lightning, and her name Mother of Exiles. From her beacon hand glows worldwide welcome. Her mild eyes command the air-bridged arbor that twin cities frame. Keep, ancient lands. Your storied pomp, cries she with silent lips. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. The wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed to me. I lift my lamb beside the golden door. So it is the golden door of this country. It's the golden doors of the temple. It's the golden doors of every home that has an open door and a lit fire that inspires not only Jews, but humans to persevere and enter that covenant with God. The rainbow we saw today, a sign of continuity more than anything else, to keep on going. And as I'm new here, and as I'm a Reformed Jew, and we're famous for having one blessing that we use all the time, I'm going to use it too because I'm so honored to be in your presence for the very first time. Please join me. If you don't know Hebrew, you can sing Lai Lai Lai. We're famous for that too. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam שהחיינו וקיימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה. Thank you so much for giving opportunity to us to light our candles. I have no idea who the next is. You're going to take it from me, Bruce.
Freilichen Hanukkah, Hanukkah Sameach, Feliz Hanukkah, Spravzniko Hanukkah, Happy Hanukkah. These are just some of the ways I've learned over the years, celebrating with many Jews in many different countries, how to say Happy Hanukkah. We've been wishing each other Happy Hanukkah in many different languages for some 2,300 years. And here we are celebrating in Missoula. There's very little left of the Greek Empire. I saw a Greek infusion food truck down the block. That's pretty much, and what you see in the museums as well. There's an interesting paradox when it comes to Hanukkah. In the Code of Jewish law, it suggests that perhaps the best place to light your menorah is within the confines of your own home, in your personal space where you live. At the same time, it's always emphasized that Hanukkah is best celebrated, the joy of Hanukkah is best celebrated with friends, family, community, with strangers, as we're doing here today. So is it a personal or is it a communal holiday? In an obscure piece of Talmud, in the Tractate of Shabbat, it describes the holiday of Hanukkah, the events leading up to the miracle, and it ends off with something very interesting. It says, L'shana acheret, a year later, the sages declared a holiday of Hanukkah. And obviously the question is, why did they have to wait a year? The miracle was obvious. It was a supernatural miracle. The oil burnt 8 days. What were they waiting for? And the commentaries explain that they were, the ravages of Hellenism, of the Greek oppression, the outlawing of many of the most basic Jewish customs and practices, it actually had a very disastrous impact on the Jewish people. And it tore the Jewish nation apart. So even while the miracle was happening in the temple, there was still a fire burning out there. And the sages were waiting to see whether or not the miracle, the impact of the miracle, the effect of the lights of the temple, whether it's going to take hold, whether it's actually going to heal the nation, bring the nation back together again, bring the nation back to the temple again. So while it was very easy for the few hundred or perhaps couple thousand of those brave men who had made the events, who had made this miracle happen, all the events that led up to that, the bravery, the victory, all of that they created, they helped create, that wasn't enough. It wasn't just for them. The sages said, we cannot celebrate until everyone is drawn back in to this celebration. We learn from this two things. First of all, change takes time. When there's a great darkness out there, when there's a great struggle, change, lasting change, doesn't happen overnight. It's one candle at a time, one season at a time, spring, summer, winter, fall, and then we could be sure that a celebration will actually last for generations. But most importantly, it teaches us that a celebration, a holiday, could only be declared when we're all together, when every single Jew is given the opportunity to celebrate Hanukkah. Back in 1973, when the Lubavitcher Rebbe in New York started the Hanukkah campaign, the Chabadniks created 60,000 of these, brought them in from China.
Don't say that out loud.
It's a fact. 48 years later, over 760,000 of these little humble tin menorahs are being given out by Chabad centers around the world. And that really is the message of Hanukkah. That's what Hanukkah is all about. Of course, we're all going to light our menorahs in our sanctuaries, in our private homes, in our temples. But Hanukkah really is best celebrated the way we're doing it here today, representatives from all over the state. When I see the Shamash, Governor, I think about you and the role that you play. A leading example, a shining light for all of the state of Montana. Thank you for everything that you do, for your support for the Jewish community, for Israel, and may you continue to lead us in health, in joy, and prosperity. Thank you all. Happy Hanukkah.
Happy Hanukkah, everybody. We'll try to keep this brief for you. But the story of Hanukkah is almost an exact replica of the first time Moshe, the greatest leader of all time, the first time he encountered God. The story is told that Moshe was pasturing, shepherding his flock when he encountered a bush that was burning, and the Torah tells us it was not consumed. Now I ask you, the first time God is going to have this conversation with Moshe, and this was kind of Moshe's inaugural encounter. I'm sure God could have figured out a nicer way to introduce himself to Moses. But the incredible message that was clear over here, one of the greatest problems that leaders, which Moshe was about to embark on a journey to go against the Egyptian oppressors, those that put the Jewish people into slavery, and Moshe was going to be the one to have to take them out. So he was looking ahead at a very, very daunting task, and God understood this. What is one of the greatest problems that leaders could encounter? The truth is, every single person in their own life, I guess we could sum it up in one word: burnout. We're exhausted. Enough. You know, we start our lives, our marriages, there's that magical spark that comes along with it, and with every single day and every single new troublesome that may rise up in the home, that slowly dims. It could be in work. We're excited to start our new job and to find something new out there. And every single one of the daily grinds, it just brings us down. We become exhausted. We don't have any more oil in our tank. So how do we make sure that we don't get affected by this? God was telling Moses, you want to know how you can make sure that your bush will not be consumed? You know what you got to put your life to? Doing something positive, doing something good. Moshe was out there to change the landscape of the world. When that was his focus, when that was something that Moshe was looking towards, and the truth is, every single person, when your life is going to be one where you're focused about doing good, not just for yourself, not just for your family, but for your block, for your neighborhood, for your city, for your community, that is when you could ensure that your energy will not wane. The menorah, when the Jewish people went into the temple, what did they find? One little jug of oil. You could say in my life, I don't have any energy left. But when you focus, when your entire life is one towards doing good, you can make sure that your bush will not be consumed and your flame will never die. Happy Hanukkah.
Hello. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Janet Tatz, the lay leader of the Helena Jewish community. And several of our rabbis could not be here today, and I have a few messages to convey from them. This is from Rabbi Mark Kula. Shalom, Montana friends, and happy Hanukkah. Our presence together brings light into each other's lives, homes, and public spaces. My regrets for not being here in person. I'm in Great Falls for a funeral of a longtime member of our Montana Jewish community, Don Cherry. May the Cherry family know comfort and blessed memories. The Cherry family moved to Montana close to 50 years ago, when being Jewish here was indeed a miracle. The settlers of Montana were heroes, Maccabees actually, dedicating Jewish community, celebrating Jewish practice, affirming Jewish identity, and kindling expansive Jewish light for all to know. Montana Maccabees truly assure a future for Montana Jews. The Allwise family of Billings are relatives of my wife, Dr. Corinne Duffy, a music professor at University of Montana. The Allwise brothers settled in Butte and then Billings over 100 years ago. One lineage remained and the other returned to Chicago. We of the Chicago lineage now live here again. The Allwises built the Montana Jewish community, and we are continuing in their footsteps. Traveling across our state, leading Shabbat services, teaching Judaism, and commemorating life cycle events, I see the miracle of Jewish life, the devotion of Jewish people to sustain the ever-glowing light of Torah and Gimult Chasadim, acts of loving kindness. Our Montana Jewish communities offer a true commitment, bettering the world and lives of every person. This is the bigger message of Hanukkah, the lights, the pathway towards beyond the 8-day festival. 2021 has taught us that glimmers of light will always shine through the darkness of life. When we add our presence to that flickering light, it will grow and illuminate the world like a dream coming true. Interestingly, Hanukkah is always aligned with the weekly Torah portion of Joseph and his dreams. There is surely a connection. We retell the story of one jar of oil alighting the temple menorah for 8 days, when it was only enough for one. Often, we experience life as time running out. A greater truth is the miracle of life continuing on for generations with our ever-expanding spirit and capacity to love. I believe the miracle of Hanukkah identifies our awareness that nothing lasts forever, while miraculously inspiring us to dream that love and goodness endures eternally. On behalf of Zootown Jews of Missoula and Beth Aaron of Billings, I pray on this Hanukkah that God's presence blesses our Jewish communities of Montana and all of humanity. Amen. Yeah. And now I'll read one short one from Rabbi Francine Roston from the Glacier Jewish community and B'nai Shalom. As the Hanukkah candles light up the darkness, may we all do everything we can to be bright lights and sources of service and inspiration for the people of our communities and of our blessed state of Montana. All the best, Rabbi Francine Roston.
I'll make this quick. This is just a message from Lori Franklin, Rabbi in Missoula. Sorry, I just had it and it went out. Greetings to everyone here today. I would like to offer a brief reflection about Hanukkah. Hanukkah is deeply meaningful to me and my community, Congregation Har Shalom, because it affirms the Jewish identity at a time of the year when commercial focus is on Christmas and also at a time in the history of the nation when anti-Semitism is on the rise. We are proud of our traditions and we love to share them with others. Recently I wrote a Hanukkah guide for our schools, for our local school district. As a member of the value group. Value is an acronym that stands for inclusion, validation, action, learning, understanding, equity. I'm proud to be a founding member of value because it arose from reports of our children experiencing racial and religious slurs at a school, affirming Jewish identity and sharing the power and beauty of our traditions as an antidote to hate. Thank you to our lawmakers for your for this special opportunity, and a happy Hanukkah. I now want to invite Rabbi Ed Stafman. I'm sorry that the governor couldn't be here to hear the whole program, and we hope that he will in the future. Thank you.
Well, thank you everybody for being here. Happy Hanukkah. This is my 13th year doing this. Chabad rabbis, thank you for being here. Superintendent Arnson and my good colleague, Representative, soon-to-be Senator McCamey. Glad to see you. So, as you may know, there are actually 5 Hanukkah stories, one in each of the 4 books of Maccabees, and then one that the rabbis created in the 1st century, but 2 of which have survived to today: the story of the Maccabees and the story of the miracle of the light. The Maccabee story is about the villainous Greek-Syrian king who oppressed Jews, and through war, Jews prevailed. The miracle of the light tells about how there wasn't enough oil to dedicate the temple, and by a miracle of faith, the oil that could only last for 1 day lasted 8. Our ancient rabbis, interestingly enough, purposely excluded the Maccabee story from the Bible, as well as from the Talmud, except for a brief passing reference. But they loved the story about the light, and the Talmud goes on and on and on about it. Well, in these divisive times, the Maccabee story has made a big comeback, even though for thousands of years it was pretty much suppressed. After all, it features bad guys, villains, and adversaries, battles, and conflict. But this Hanukkah, rather than thinking about external villains, I'll be thinking about my own dark side and the damage it can do when unacknowledged and unchecked. Shedding light on our own dark places is the real spirit of Hanukkah, and it's why our sages loved the story of the light. In my first term as the first congregational rabbi ever to serve in a state legislature anywhere, the toughest part for me, was how too often each side sees the other side as a villain. Our rabbis excluded the story featuring good guys and villains from our sacred texts precisely to teach that the real villain in most conflicts is the concept of the villain itself. A villain, the other, a status which we Jews have all too often held, lets us avoid dealing with the dark part of each of us that resides within us. In his brilliant book, The Shadow Effect, Deepak Chopra writes, quote, "The dark side of human nature thrives on war, struggle, and conflict. As soon as you talk about winning, you've already lost," he says. So we all have dark thoughts, individually and as a nation. Fear, lust, anger, jealousy, deceit can drive our decision-making. Yet we often deny this part of ourselves. And that's why it's so hard to even suggest that we have a problem with some parts of our history. It's the denial of that dark part of ourselves. But dark energy is part of human spirit. You can't know honesty without knowing deceit. Good can't exist without evil. And life is not life without death. Our challenge is to reconcile all of these forces within each of us, and whoever denies this and thinks himself without the shadow will inevitably be dominated by the forces of that darkness called the shadow effect. And that's my problem, as it was our ancient sages and rabbis with the Maccabee Hanukkah story. It's so tempting to portray Hanukkah as a story where the good guys, us, won and the villains lost, with barely a mention of the complicated political and religious conflict that lied underneath, as my colleague Rabbi Sonia referenced. When it's all about my side winning, we ignore our dark side, intensifying its power, so that instead of us controlling it, the shadow winds up controlling us. But if we resolve to acknowledge all of ourselves, especially our darkest aspects, only then can we stop the fear that is dividing our society. Hanukkah is the time when we focus on bringing light into our own darkness. It's why our Torah reading at Hanukkah, as was said by Rabbi Kula, is always the story of Joseph. Because after Joseph's youth, where he was so full of himself, he spent time in the darkness of a pit and then a dungeon, and he learned to recognize his dark side, and that's what made him great. The great Hasidic master of the 18th century, Rebbe Yehuda Aryeh Lev of Gur, taught that the flask of Hanukkah oil with the seal of the high priest refers to a place in each of our souls that is pure and undefiled. Every Hanukkah, that place is awakened and begins to expand and shine more and more each day, bringing us back to our spiritual center, the holy temple that is within. And no matter how we fall, on Hanukkah, he teaches, we each have access to that special place. And access to that place allows us to shine light on our dark places. And once we are conscious of that, we can control it rather than allowing it to control us. And this, he says, is how soul healing takes place on Hanukkah. And when we do that, we get back the vision we had as children, seeing life with a freshness, seeing that life is continually amazing. And we remember how to appreciate the miracles around us, which is why Hanukkah is the holiday of miracles. And then finally, once we're able to do this on the personal level, we can turn it into success on the collective level. The question shifts from, can any one of us do better, to can we all do better? And we then realize that some of the dogmas of the past, often grounded in villains and others, are inadequate to the present. And I know that's difficult to do, but we must rise to the occasion. So this Hanukkah, I'm going to focus on the miracle of the light, and especially to let it illumine that dark side of me that I don't pay enough attention to. And I'm going to pray that we're all inspired to do a little of that, and that together we can bring more light into each of us and then into the world, and we can make a difference. Happy Hanukkah.
Thank you all, and I want to thank Chabad for bringing the goodies and Hanukkahs and all that. We're open now. That's the end of our formal program. I welcome you to stay and catch up with others and to celebrate the season here in the Capitol. Thank you all for coming.
Okay.